From the co-writer of Jack and the creator of The Purge comes a creepy horror film starring Pete Davidson. Let's talk about it. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's movie review of The Home, the newest film from director James DeMonaco. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this will be spoiler-filled, or at least portion of it will be spoiler-filled, but the non-spoiler stuff will come in the synopsis and review so that you can watch it and then eventually watch that spoiler-filled stuff. But The Home is about a character named Max, who's played by Pete Davidson. He's an individual that is a young individual who's a wayward, kind of lost soul in a lot of respects. You know, his brother was, killed when he was younger. He lived in a foster care system, and he grows up and he lives in a home, a place where he does drugs and all that stuff, and he does something that gets him in trouble. He's offered community service thanks to his stepfather, and he goes to this retirement home that is run by a character played by Bruce Altman and contains individuals that are played by John Glover and of course Ethan Phillips. And basically he starts to uncover and unravel some really strange and chaotic stuff that starts to happen when he, as most psychological films do, as he moves deeper and deeper into the story. And so that's the story. It leads to a conclusion that has a, kind of a twist ending and stuff like that. And so with that said, that's The Home. It's basically a psychological thriller about a young man who just starts discovering some weird, creepy stuff at a retirement center. So with that said, James DeMonaco is of course known for creating The Purge. Also wrote stuff like The Negotiator and of course Jack, which I was joking about, but he actually did co-write Jack, which was a terrible movie. But The Purge is pretty popular. It's what I consider like one of the more popular horror franchises in quite a while. I think the last couple of Purge movies were pretty decent. But James DeMonaco and co-writer Adam Cantor decided to go in a completely different direction with his newest film and create kind of a psychological horror film more than kind of a straightforward, like, telling of the times and stuff like that. But the trailer looked cool. I like good psychological horror films. It reminded me of like an early 2000s horror film, kind of in the sense of like, House on Haunted Hill or 13 Ghosts. So I knew going in that this movie was probably not going to be very good, but I wanted it to at least be fun and entertaining. And Pete Davidson, you could take it for what it's worth. He's kind of a conflicted actor when it comes to what he's capable of doing. So I didn't know how this movie was going to be. So thank you for allowing me to see this early. I know it was the mystery movie of the week. And so with that said, for my honest opinion of this movie, as non-spoiler as I can be, I really enjoyed this movie. It does feel like an early 2000s, late 99 type film. When it comes to the psychological horror aspects, it really feels like that James DeMonaco is tapping into his strengths as creating creepy environments and very disturbing visuals. And I think Pete Davidson, with all his weaknesses and, some strengths, I think he's capable in what he's doing in here. I think as it goes along, he becomes a little more goofy, I guess you could say, but the kind of way he starts out, the way we like deal with him in the beginning, it's really kind of an interesting character arc. And I like the residents of this, this old folks home. I love John Glover. He's a great character actor. Been in a lot of stuff. One of my favorite performances of his is Gremlins 2, of course. But he's done stuff like this before. He's done like the horror. I think he was in like one of the Predator movies or whatever. But he is an actor that I really enjoyed. He plays a lost thespian, a guy who wishes he could have had more. We of course have Bruce Altman in this movie, who I remember from like Rookie of the Year. He's a really talented actor. He plays the doctor in this movie. And then of course we have Ethan Phillips, who has been in quite a few things as well. And like there's also a lot of older cast members who may not be as well known, but of course the Max character, the Pete Davidson character, he starts to befriend some of the characters and so on and so forth. And once again, because this is a psychological horror film, things start to happen and things start to become kind of out of place as Max moves along. So I think overall, the movie is really an interesting one. I think it gets a little crazy and over the top and silly that only James DeMonaco can do at this point. But I think I had fun with it. I think the setting of the home itself is really creepy and really interesting. You can't go to certain floors as most of these movies do. And of course the character is going to go to those floors. And there's a lot of there that, really sets the movie in kind of, we've seen it there, done it there, like territory, and the music, it kind of sets that tone as well. But I think what this movie does and what I think it does well is just get you in that mood of just being creeped out and just being terrified about certain things that happen in this movie. If you see the poster, you maybe, and I'll talk about my spoiler area, the poster with the eye and stuff like that might affect you. I don't know. But I think, when it comes down to what this movie is and what this movie does and how Max's character plays through the movie, and though it is a little rote, and I know a lot of people are not going to like this movie, I just had fun with it. I think it gets wacky. I think it's crazy. I think as the movie moves along, you kind of have to start getting into the headspace of like, this is very campy in a lot of respects. It does a lot of weird things. It does a lot of James DeMonaco things when it comes to like his purge sensibilities. And I think this movie is just a really entertaining, fun, weird, kind of crazy romp that leads to like a really insane set piece at the very end. And I think it's just a really it's a fun time to me, to be fairly honest. It's not going to do very well in the theaters. It'll be on VOD, but like a lot of the 99, 2000 era, horror films, the Dark Castle pictures, the stuff that Robert Zemeckis and Joel Silver were producing, I think this movie just goes for it. I don't think it entirely succeeds, but I think it's entertaining at least. So that's kind of where I land when it comes to the non-spoiler version of The Home. I think Pete Davidson does a pretty decent job in what he's being given and kind of where he has to go. But once again, Pete Davidson's not known for the greatest actor in the world. He is an individual that tries to go for different kind of commentaries on himself, like the King of Staten Island and stuff like that. And I think it's a fun role for him. I think it's a fun role for the movie, and I think where the characters go is really interesting, and where it kind of lands, it may not hit for everyone, but I think it was fun. So, but that's my non-spoiler take for The Home. And before we get into spoiler territory, if you want to stop here before seeing the movie, let me know what you think in the comments below about wanting to see this movie, all that good stuff. So let me know. But without further ado, let's go ahead and head into spoiler territory right now. So for a movie like this, I don't think it does anything entirely new or creative or original. I think it's pretty standard by the book. Guy loses a family member, in this point, a brother. I think this movie it hits the beats that you think exactly where it's going to hit. But like I said in my non-spoiler version, the late 90s, early 2000s, the House on Haunted Hill remakes and the 13 Ghosts remakes and all those types of films, I think they hit a level of just fun and entertainment. They're not good. They're pretty bad actually, but they have a level of just like camp to them. They have a level of like what, William Castle was going for in his films, just a level of, you go there to have fun, you go there to be entertained and spooked out and creeped out and scared. Yes, it's going to be cheesy and plotty, but I think in the 99s and 2000s and stuff like that, I think that's what Joel Silver and Robert Zemeckis and all that crew were trying to do. William Malone directed a lot of those movies, and with a movie like this and with what James DeMonaco eventually did with the Purge franchise, I think he gets it. I think he understands it. He brought in Adam Cantor to do this film, and they get a pretty decent cast. He gets a lot of cool, older individuals like John Glover, who I love. Like I said, I loved him in Gremlins 2. He's been in a lot of stuff. I think he was in Smallville and stuff like that. Ethan Phillips has been in a lot of stuff. Bruce Altman's been in a lot of stuff. But what I think about makes this movie work is like the older cast, because they have to set up this plot of, this kid has lost, or this young person has lost his, family. He's become wayward. He's a drug addict. He gets in trouble, has to be set up to go to this home. And this home has to be filled with individuals who can play the story well. And you have to have at least a couple of well-known actors to kind of coincide with the other actors who may not be as well known, or maybe they are, and they're just kind of, or they're brought in, maybe James DeMonaco's family was in this movie or something like that. But you kind of have to have a kind of leveling of like good, really talented actors to fill out kind of the lesser known actors. And what this movie does is it does that pretty well. It doesn't mean it works all the time, because you can kind of see where this movie's going from a million miles away. I mean, constantly Pete Davidson's Max character is having nightmares about stuff that he's seen, or stuff that like you think, oh, it's happening to him, like the Bruce Altman Dr. Sabian character has like experimented on him, and he wakes up in the middle of the nightmare, and you realize it's following the similar thing of like Shutter Island, where things are happening, but you're not entirely sure if that's true or not. And it's going exactly where you think it's going to go. People are dying. He meets an older woman who is trying to warn him, and she really like comes to like respect him. And she has this piece, kind of like a totem in a lot of respects, where, the Pete Davidson Max character is like, that looks familiar. It looks like a chess piece. And we find out later on that, of course, there's a reason for that. And as this movie moves along, you can tell more and more that there's something truly off. He goes to the fourth floor, which he's told not to. There's this like weird thing where they're watching these like videos about oil production or whatever. And these like old people, or it almost feels like a psych asylum, like a psychological asylum or something like that. one of them attacks him, and you know that's going to play out later on. And of course, Max has like dreams about it, but the setup is slowly revealing itself to be something more than it seems. You know, once again, the problems with this movie are just the fact that Max's character is too smart for this, and the doctors and like the people are kind of not really playing it off because there's like a lot of sexual BDSM and stuff like that going on in this movie with people having sex, and it's all leading to a really interesting conclusion that I felt was really cool, and kind of it leads to like an action sequence at the end, which I was like, it's a little too much. But the lead up to this, like how John Glover's character and his like lost past with him being a thespian really plays out really well, and kind of as a, you know, a thing to set up to kind of how this movie plays out. And it's just, I really found like a lot of stuff I knew kind of where it was going, but then the kind of the big thing happens and it becomes kind of really cool, and you're kind of going on the journey, and like the kind of iconography and kind of the shots that James DeMonaco is using, where we'll see people up in the windows of the building, and you know, why is one guy biting his finger off and like marking it with his blood and stuff like that. There's a lot of cool stuff and a lot of cool imagery in this movie that I really appreciated. As the movie moves along, you start realizing there's a lot of eye stuff in this movie. Like I said, that the poster has the eye with the needle, which becomes really important. I feel like they could have done a little bit better poster, so they kind of ruined what this movie was kind of doing. But then it leads into, of course, his friend, the older woman of Max, the friend of Max, is killed. She's dropped from because she is basically, she doesn't want Max to be what will eventually be, you know, revealed of what's going on, and she's killed for her beliefs. And once again, John Glover's character plays it really well when he becomes psychotic. But the real kind of thing that this movie is playing on, what it eventually gets to, is going to be very divisive on what people believe, because it is dealing with people who have been researching for the Fountain of Youth for decades upon, you know, eons or whatever, millennia or whatever. And this movie goes, we know exactly what the Fountain of Youth is, and we're going to play it. And some people might think that's funny. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here that's going to be played for last because of how like weird and creepy and campy it becomes, because this movie is very campy in its respect. But basically, the people up in the 4th floor, Max's character discovers from the pictures he finds in the room that's hidden from in his foster care home that contains trinkets and totems and stuff like that. This is where the totem that Max is given, that his, you know, belonged to his brother. And basically what ends up happening is this foster care system is basically taking kids, raising them as a family, and then using them to basically extract their essence, their spirit, that makes and allows these people in this retirement home to stay forever young. Now they're old, but they will never die. Some are 100 years old. Basically, there is a chemical or some kind of thing underneath your eye that they can extract and keep extracting and allow them to live forever. And then all this is like a setup. You know, all the old people are setting these people up. The kids that they like kidnapped and used are all the old people on the 4th floor. One of them was actually, of course, Max's brother. And of course, Max is taken hostage, or he's kidnapped by these people and used for his young adolescence age to basically keep them young. So it's basically a ploy of like a mystical device to allow these people to live forever. And it's weird, it's campy, it's goofy. It's like really, a lot of this movie is really disgusting, like really violent. It's what James DeMonaco's Purge franchise does really well. But of course, one of the the brother who's now old of Max, it basically extracts all the youthful stuff from the people up in the 4th floor and gives it to Max, who has been basically comatose. But then he goes on a murder spree where he kills everyone. This is Max. He goes on a action murder spree and starts murdering the whole entire retirement center, kills them in very bloody fashion, and then uses their essence to basically allow all the people on the 4th floor who are basically held hostage to go out and live their lives. And that's the end of the movie. And whether you can kind of get on board with that is up to you. It's very campy, it's very over the top and silly, it's very action oriented, which I don't think this movie needed an action sequence at the end. I think you could have, like, you know, there's a way to do it that could be more dramatic, but I feel like, James DeMonaco's like, he can't help himself, and so he needed like an action sequence where, Pete Davidson's character takes a tomahawk and takes a knife and just starts stabbing people and splitting open their guts and, basically chopping off hands in a very gruesome fashion, and, uses John Glover's character as a shield as the Dr. Sabian's character starts shooting everyone. It's a really kind of over the top and silly, and I get it. I understand why people wouldn't like it, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was entertaining. I think the reveal is pretty cool with the fact that they found some way to live forever. It's not the smartest movie in the world, but it does a lot of fun with what it's trying to do, and I enjoyed it for what it's worth. And that's kind of where it is when it comes to spoiler territory. It's a movie about old people who have found a way to live forever through the eyes of young people. And that could be kind of a take on how young people have such full lives and such, ambition and stuff like that. And then the old people feel like they want that. And, that could be like James DeMonaco and Adam Cantor going, we're getting to an age in our life where we wish we could be those 20-year-olds or 25-year-olds or 15-year-olds, and we can't anymore. And this is kind of a ambitious dream of like, here's a way we found to live forever. I mean, I don't know. It's fun how it gets set up. It's fun how John Glover's character kind of sprinkles in what they're attempting and what they're doing. And I don't know, I liked it. I had fun with it. It's not the greatest movie in the world, but it reminds me of those early 2000s horror films that does a pretty decent job with what it's doing. I think it's one of the better James DeMonaco films. I like the Purge, Election Year, and I like the Purge, Forever or whatever. But yeah, that's the Home. That's the movie with Pete Davidson. It's a lot more ambitious than I was expecting, so there you go. Anyways, with that said, that is my take on The Home, directed by James DeMonaco. That is the spoiler portion of it, so I do appreciate it. In the comments below, what did you think of this movie? If you saw it, I know it was a mystery movie, so I know a lot of people did see it. Did you like the overall tone? Did you like where it headed? If you didn't, I totally understand, but let me know why. But otherwise, if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. As always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out, guys.